Your life as every rank in an elite presidential protection unit level 1, the candidate. The polygraph technician doesn't blink when he asks about the drugs. You answer honestly. Twice in college, nothing since. The machine hums. He writes something down you can't read upside down, and you spend the next 11 seconds convinced your life is over before it even starts. It isn't. You pass. 340 applicants started this cycle. 41 make it to the academy in Beltsville. You do the math in the parking lot and feel something cold settle in your chest. Not pride. Recognition. You are now visible to people who were never visible to you. The training is 14 weeks. Firearms, defensive tactics, protective formations, medical, law. You learn to read a room in 4 seconds, exits, elevated positions, hands you can't see. You learn the phrase principle and stop using the word president out loud even in casual conversation because habits formed here don't turn off at 5 p.m. Your instructor, a 22-year veteran with a voice like gravel in a dryer, tells you something on day 9 that you'll repeat to yourself for the rest of your career. You're not here to be a hero. You're here to be a wall. Walls don't get remembered. Walls just don't fall down. You nod like you understand. You don't. Not yet. At night, you run through scenarios that haven't happened. A car backfires 2 blocks from your apartment and your hand moves toward your hip before your brain catches up. Your girlfriend asks if you're okay. You say you're fine. You're not lying exactly. You just don't have the words yet for what's happening to you. Week 11, they run you through a live fire scenario with paint rounds and a fake motorcade. You freeze for half a second when the attacker breaks the rope line. Half a second is nothing and half a second is everything. Your instructor pulls the tape and makes you watch it 4 times in front of the class. You don't freeze again. Graduation is a Tuesday. Your mother cries. You get your creds, your first sidearm, your first radio call sign, a designation, not a name. You are no longer the person you were 3 months ago. You just don't know how far that goes yet. Level 2. The post stander. Your first assignment is 16 months on a fixed post outside a residence in Northwest DC. 4 hours on, 4 hours off, rotating. You stand in weather you didn't know existed. Hailstorms in April, humidity that soaks through Kevlar by 10 a.m. You memorize the block. Every car, every dog walker, every delivery driver's face until a new one shows up and your pulse spikes over a UPS uniform. Nothing happens. That's the job. Nothing happening for months. So that when something does happen, you're not surprised by it. You learn the invisible hierarchy fast. Post standers don't speak unless spoken to on the radio. Shift leaders don't explain themselves. The agents on the detail, the ones who actually walk beside the protectee, don't make eye contact with you at all. Your furniture with a gun. You resent it for the first 6 weeks. Then you stop resenting it because resentment costs energy you need for the next 8 hours of standing still. There's a currency here nobody tells you about at the academy. Reliability, not skill, not intelligence. Whether you show up, stay sharp, and never once become the reason a shift leader has to explain something to their boss. You start clocking who burns that currency and who hoards it. An agent named Delacroix, 2 years ahead of you, got noticed for catching a discrepancy in a credentialed vendor's paperwork. Small thing. Cost the vendor his contract. Got Delacroix a name recognized 2 levels up. You file that away. Month 9, a man in a gray sedan parks across the street 3 days running. Same time, same spot. You log it. Nobody above you seems concerned. You log it again. On the 4th day, you walk over yourself off protocol and ask him what he's doing there. Turns out he's waiting to pick up his daughter from a piano lesson 2 doors down. You apologize. He doesn't care. You care for hours afterward about how close you came to escalating nothing into something. You stop calling your mother every Sunday. Not a decision exactly, just an erosion. Level 3. The advanced agent. 18 months in, you rotate onto advanced work and the job changes shape entirely. Now you're the one arriving 5 days before the protectee, walking hotel kitchens, counting exits, negotiating with local police chiefs who resent your presence and need you anyway. You build a document, a survey, that maps every threat surface in a 3-mile radius, sniper sightlines, ambulance routes, the names of every staff member who will be within 30 feet of the principal, cross-checked against federal databases you're not supposed to talk about at dinner parties. You get good at reading people who lie to your face, the hotel manager who swears the loading dock camera works, the local commander who says his SWAT team trained for this exact scenario last month when you both know he's improvising. Power at this level is information nobody else has yet. You know the motorcade route 6 hours before the press does. You know which senator's aide tried to get an unscheduled photo op and got quietly declined. You start to understand that protection isn't really about bullets. It's about controlling what people know and when they know it. There's a moment in Charlotte, A rally, 40,000 people, when a credentialed photographer's badge doesn't match your morning manifest. You pull him aside yourself. Turns out it's nothing, a printing error from the campaign's press office. But for 90 seconds, standing in a service corridor with your hand near your weapon, you feel the full weight of what you signed up for. You don't sleep that night, not from fear, from the electricity of having been right to check. That feeling, being right, being necessary, becomes something you start chasing without admitting it to yourself. You start volunteering for advances nobody else wants, the overseas ones with unstable local security and jet lag that never fully lifts. Your file gets a note in it. Shows initiative, seeks difficult assignments. You don't know yet that this note is the first line of the story other people will use to explain you later when you're not in the room. Level 4, the detail agent. 4 years in, you make the detail. Now you walk within arm's reach of the protectee. You hear the phone calls, they don't hang up fast enough. You see the exhaustion behind the makeup, the second whiskey after the cameras leave, the argument with a spouse through a hotel door you're standing outside of pretending you can't hear. You are told explicitly that discretion isn't a virtue here. It's the price of the badge. You sign documents. You understand, without anyone spelling it out, that what you see and what you repeat are two entirely separate categories for the rest of your life. The money is better now. $118,000 base, closer to $150,000 with overtime and hazard differentials during a campaign season. But you don't think about the money much. You think about proximity. Proximity is the real currency at this level. Who rides in which vehicle? Who gets the earpiece with the direct feed? Who the principal remembers by name? You start understanding the loyalty structure isn't top-down, it's lateral. Your detail brothers and sisters cover for your bathroom break, your bad night's sleep, your slow reaction on a rope line. You cover for theirs. The bond isn't friendship, it's closer and colder than that. It's function. One night on a foreign trip, a junior aide asks you, half joking, what you'd do if the order came down wrong. If the threat was internal instead of external. You don't answer. You've thought about it. Everyone at this level has thought about it, quietly, and decided not to finish the thought out loud. 6 weeks later, on a domestic swing through 3 states in 4 days, you go 11 hours without sitting down. Your knees lock during a standing ovation and you don't move, because moving means someone notices, and someone noticing means a note in a file, and a note in a file means questions you don't have good answers for. You hold the position until the room empties. That's the first crack. You don't examine it too closely. Level 5, the shift leader. 7 years in, they hand you a shift. Now you're not reacting to threats. You're deciding which threats get resources and which get logged and forgotten. 6 agents report to you. Their mistakes are your mistakes now on paper in front of people who write your performance reviews. You learn the second invisible rule of the system. Information flows up filtered, and you are one of the filters. An agent under you flags a credible-sounding threat from an online account with 200 followers and a history of empty bravado. Protocol says escalate everything. Practically, escalating everything buries the signal that matters in noise nobody has time to read. You make a call. You downgrade it to routine monitoring. You're right. Nothing happens. But you understand now that being right isn't the same as being safe. If you'd been wrong, your name would be the one in the after-action report, the one congressional staffers ask about in a closed hearing room. You start making calls like this weekly. Each one costs you something small, a sliver of certainty replaced by calculation. You stop being able to watch the news without diagramming exit routes for restaurants you're not even working. Your spouse notices you've started sitting with your back to the wall at dinner, everywhere. You used to leave this at the office, she says. You don't have an answer because there hasn't been an office edge to leave it at for a long time. You get invited for the first time to a briefing with people whose names you've only seen in memos. You sit at the far end of the table and say nothing. You watch how power actually moves in that room, not through rank, but through who gets asked a direct question and who doesn't. You start managing your own agents the way you were managed. Reliability first, loyalty second, talent a distant third. One of your best people burns out at month 14, snaps at a supervisor during a routine sweep, gets quietly rotated out. You sign the transfer paperwork without a second thought and only realize weeks later that you never once asked her if she was okay. You want to be asked a direct question. You just don't notice yet that you've stopped asking anyone else one. Level 6, the special agent in charge. 11 years in, you run a division. 240 agents answer, in some chain, to you. Budget lines with 8 figures cross your desk. You negotiate directly with the White House Chief of Staff's office about resource allocation during a re-election cycle, and you learn that protection and politics stopped being separate categories long before you arrived. A senator's office quietly requests additional coverage for a family member. Nothing official, a favor, dressed up as a security concern that doesn't quite meet threshold. You know granting it means overextending agents already running on fumes. You know denying it means a phone call from someone whose name appears in budget hearings that determine whether your division gets the staffing increase you requested 18 months ago. You grant it. You tell yourself it's a judgment call, the same kind you've made 100 times. It isn't. And some part of you that used to stand post in the rain for 432 hours a year knows the difference. That part of you gets quieter every month. You start attending the events instead of working them. Tuxedo instead of tactical vest. You shake hands with people whose protection you once stood 12 feet from in a rainstorm, and they don't recognize you because you were furniture then and you're a name on a briefing now. The isolation starts here, though you don't call it that yet. You call it seniority. Your old detail partners stop inviting you to the after-shift drinks, not out of malice, just gravity. You've become the person whose presence changes a room. Nobody relaxes around the person who signs their evaluations. Your marriage ends the year you make deputy assistant director. Not dramatically, quietly, the way most things end at this level. A negotiated settlement, mutual, no leaks to press because you both know how, professionally, to prevent a leak. You go home to an apartment with a security system better than most embassies and sit in a silence you engineered yourself. You pour a drink you don't finish and realize you've started reading your own division's threat logs the way other people read novels, not for information, but because the alternative is sitting with your own thoughts, and you've lost the habit of that. Level 7, the inner circle. 16 years in, you're one of 11 people who know the full continuity of government protocols. Not the sanitized version briefed to Congress, the real one. You sit in rooms without windows and discuss scenarios that would end civilizations if the press ever got the transcripts. You know which world leaders have medical conditions their own countries haven't disclosed. You know exactly how many minutes exist between a credible nuclear alert and a decision that can't be unmade. Power at this level isn't about access anymore. It's about erasure. You can make an incident disappear from public record with 3 phone calls. You've done it twice. Once for an agent whose weapon discharged accidentally in a hotel corridor, no injuries, no leaks, no career-ending inquiry. Once for something you don't let yourself think about in detail, filed under a classification you helped write. You tell yourself both times it was necessary. You've told yourself that so many times the sentence doesn't mean anything anymore. It's just a shape your mouth makes. You get a security detail of your own now. 3 agents rotating, the same exhausted vigilance you gave for a decade, now given to you. You recognize the look in the youngest one's eyes. It's the look you had at level 2, standing in the rain, memorizing a stranger's dog-walking schedule. You almost say something to him. You don't. There isn't a version of the truth that would help him, and you know it. There's a night, 2:40 a.m., a secure line, a voice you recognize immediately. When you're asked a question you're not allowed to write down anywhere, ever, in any form. You answer it, you go back to sleep 40 minutes later, and in the morning you eat breakfast like a normal person because at this level, normal is a costume you put on for the parts of the day that don't require the truth. You stop attending your father's birthday, not a decision, a byproduct. The job doesn't ask you to choose anymore. It just consumes the hours you would have used to choose. Level 8, the director. 23 years in, you run the entire apparatus, 9,000 personnel, a budget larger than some national defense ministries. Your signature authorizes protective details for 4 living presidents, a dozen foreign heads of state on U.S. soil, and contingency plans for 100 scenarios the public will never learn existed. You don't carry a weapon anymore. You haven't stood a post in 19 years. Your protection now is protection from information. Who gets briefed, who gets deniability, who gets sacrificed if a protocol fails publicly. You've become the wall your first instructor told you to be, except now the wall is made of paper and silence instead of Kevlar. You eat dinner alone 4 nights a week in a townhouse with blackout curtains you had installed yourself because you know exactly what kind of surveillance exists and exactly how thin the line is between watching and being watched. The 5th night, you eat with your own detail nearby, out of earshot, and you find yourself grateful for their presence in a way you'd never say out loud. The closest thing to company you allow yourself anymore. There's a young agent, 3rd year, sharp, still believes reliability is the only currency that matters, who gets flagged for your personal detail rotation. You watch her file cross your desk and you feel something you don't have a clean word for. Not pride, not regret. Recognition, the same cold recognition you felt in a parking lot in Beltsville 23 years ago, except now you're standing on the other side of it. You could tell her what's coming, the years it costs, the marriage or the version of yourself that could have had one, the specific quiet of a room with 11 people and a protocol nobody else will ever be told about. The 2:40 a.m. phone calls you can't write down. You don't tell her. Nobody told you either. It wouldn't have stopped you. It didn't stop you. You sign her transfer order and set your pen down, and for a moment the office is very quiet, the kind of quiet that costs exactly what it looks like it costs. Somewhere in Beltsville, a polygraph technician doesn't blink when a 24-year-old answers a question about the 2 times in college. The machine hums. He thinks the hardest part is behind him. It isn't, but he will.